stood on the battlefield, and as I am now honored to do in this, the People's House. Steadfast and loyal, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The chair lays before the House an enrolled bill.
H.R. 886, an act to require the Secretary of the Treasury to mint coins in commemoration of the 225th anniversary of the establishment of the nation's first federal law enforcement agency, the United States Marshals Service.
The chair lays before the House the following personal request.
Leave of absence requested for Mr. Jackson of Illinois for today.
Without objection, the request is granted. The chair announces the Speaker's appointment pursuant to Section 201B of the International Religious Freedom Act of 1998, 22 U.S.C. 6431 note, as amended, and the order of the House of January 5, 2011, of the following member on the part of the House to the Commission on International Religious Freedom for a term effective March 23, 2012, and ending May 14, 2014.
Mr. Robert P. George of Princeton, New Jersey.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5, 2011, the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Ellison, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Keith Ellison. I will claim the time over the next several minutes and want to talk to the issues before us today, namely the budget. The budget is the issue today, Mr. Speaker. As you may know, the House majority has come out with their budget, and of course the Progressive Caucus has come out with its budget, and that's what I want to talk about tonight. You know, the Congress, Mr. Speaker, is made up of a lot of diverse interests. We have people who span the spectrum of political thought. On the far right, those folks are present here, and they allow themselves to be heard. But we have other folks who have different points of view and believe that the best of America is the idea of liberty and justice for all. That's the Progressive Caucus. The idea that all Americans, no matter what their color is, no matter what their religion is, no matter whether they're male or female, no matter who they may be, has a right to live in a safe, free country with an opportunity to make a good, decent living with a retirement and with good, solid services like public schools, like police, fire, like all these things. And we should live in a nation where we can really promote the common welfare. And what that means is that the public sector, the private sector, together, we have a mixed economy, need to work together to elevate the best interests of all American people. To that end, the progressive message, which I want to share tonight, is going to be about this budget for all. The Progressive Caucus budget is called the Budget for All, and that's the Progressive Caucus message. You can tune in at cpc.grijalva.house.gov to learn more about it, Mr. Speaker. Now, this is the hashtag for the Budget for All. We've got the number sign, budget, number 4, all, Budget for All. We want people to check it out, read about it. It's very different from the Ryan budget. It's very different because we have a different vision for our country. It's very different because the Progressive Caucus believes that responsibility and the benefits of being an American should be shared. Whereas I think it's fair to say that the Ryan budget believes that if you give rich people a lot of money, maybe they'll start some businesses, and maybe they'll hire somebody, and maybe people who are working class and middle class might benefit. It's called trickle-down economics, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But this is a very sharp contrast to the Progressive Caucus budget, which is the Budget for All. Budget for All. Let me tell you a little bit about it, Mr. Speaker, because I think you're going to like it. The Budget for All makes the American dream a reality again By putting Americans back to work, the budget for all enhances our economic competitiveness by rebuilding the middle class and investing in innovation and education. Our budget, the Progressive Caucus budget, Budget for All, protects the basic social safety net, which is Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Now, it's very important to protect these programs, Mr. Speaker, because these programs go to help the people who basically made America for those of us living now. Let America never be a nation where our senior citizens who literally forged a way for younger people like myself and those younger will have to eat dog food, have to choose between their medication and their meal, won't have enough to make their basic ends meet. We need to support Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. That's what the Budget for All does. The Ryan budget, which is really the Republican budget, does something very, very different, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Now, it's important, Mr. Speaker, to bear in mind that when you talk about the budget of a nation, what you're really talking about is the priorities of that nation, the values of that nation. If you show me a family budget, and that family has a lot of money that they spend on potato chips, soda, and pop, and none on the gym, I'll tell you that what they value. If you show me a family that puts money into their kids' education and spends on making sure that they live in a neighborhood that's safe, and I'll show you what their values are. If you show me a family that buys nutritious foods, I'll show you what their values are. Our budget is a reflection of what we believe, and our budget as a nation is also a reflection of what we believe. Our Budget for All, here's what it reflects. First of all, it puts Americans back to work. That is the number one thing the Budget for All of the Progressive Caucus does. Our budget attacks America's persistently high unemployment levels with more than $2.4 trillion over 10 years in job-creating investment. This plan utilizes every tool at the government's disposal to get the economy working again, including, and Mr. Speaker, this is important, direct hire programs that create a school improvement corps. Also, a park improvement corps, a student job corps, and others. So right now, when we have literally 14 million people out of work looking for jobs, why don't we send them to our schools and make these schools top quality institutions and make the facility well painted, well cared for, well taken care of, so that when the boiler breaks, the principal doesn't have to say, oh my goodness, do I take it out of the maintenance budget to fix the boiler? What do I do? We got aging infrastructure in this country, and our schools are part of that, and they're crumbling, and we got to do something about it. Under the Progressive Caucus Budget for All, we spend money to hire people to help rejuvenate and improve our schools, School Improvement Corps. And also, in many districts where state and local government have been cutting back, you have teachers who are trying to service 50 kids, 40 kids. This program can help teach kids and give the teachers some real help in the classroom so that they will not be overburdened. But also, we invest in the Park Improvement Corps. Now, in my great city of Minneapolis, and I'm going back there today, I hope, you could walk around our beautiful lakes. And one of the lakes we have is called Cedar Lake, and everybody loves Cedar Lake, and you can walk through the paths there. And recently, Mr. Speaker, I stopped at a picnic table along the paths of Cedar Lake, and stamped on this, Mr. Speaker, you'd be surprised to see, it said WPA 1934. Now, that's the Works Progress Authority, a great American institution that put people back to work at a time when Americans were in high numbers out of work. I think that if that generation at that time could respond to the needs of Americans who weren't working back then in the Depression, given the high rate of unemployment, our generation should not do less. A Park Improvement Corps to help take care of the paths, take care of the parks, make sure that these great national monuments dedicated to the enjoyment of all Americans are cared for, and we hire people in the process. This is a good idea. but also student cores. Mr. Speaker, one of the things that our unemployment numbers reflect is that a lot of young people are out of work. A lot of people who just got out of college still looking for their first job. A lot of young people who decided that they didn't want to go to college but wanted to just jump right into the workforce are having a very tough time. So the Student Job Corps would be a program to put students to work. You know, Mr. Speaker, there's lots of work to be done around America. According to the American Society of Civil Engineers, there's $2 trillion worth of maintenance that needs to be done all across America. I'm talking about the roads, the bridges, the transit, all kinds of stuff. There's young people who need intervention. There's tutoring that needs to happen. There's all kinds of things that need to happen. And between the School Improvement Corps, the Park Improvement Corps, and the Student Job Corps, we will be able to literally hire millions of people. And this would be great. It would spur our economy. It would increase aggregate demand, and it would give a lifeline to some people who've been out of work for a long time. And people would really rather work, Mr. Speaker. You know that, of course, I'm a very firm believer in our social safety net for the non-elderly. I believe in it. I think Medicaid is very important. I believe that food stamps is a critical program. I believe in all these programs. But I do know, and everyone knows, that folks would rather work. And so let's set up a works program so that people can do that job and jobs that need doing. Also, Mr. Speaker, I talked about some of our direct hire programs, but what about the other aspect of the Budget for All, which focuses on the targeted tax incentives that spur clean energy, manufacturing, and cutting-edge technological investment in the private sector. Now, Republicans, if the economy is doing great, they want a tax cut. If the economy is doing bad, they say tax cut. If the economy is kind of up and down, they say tax cut. These guys think that we should always cut taxes all the time, except when working people want a tax cut. They really fought us tooth and nail over the payroll tax cut. But if ever some really rich people want a tax cut, they're all for that. And it's not that they're bad people. It's because they mistakenly assume that trickle-down economics works. They think that if you give rich people money, then rich people will maybe hire somebody, or at least that's what they're hoping for. But the tax cuts we're talking about are targeted so that we can spur clean energy, manufacturing, cutting-edge technological investment in the private sector. And, of course, President Obama has presided over America with now 23 straight months of private sector job growth. Long way to go, but definitely the right direction. The third aspect that we need to spend on for jobs is in a surface transportation bill. We propose a $556 billion surface transportation bill over the course of spread out over a number of years. But when we think about the potholes, the roads, the bridges that are old, I mean, I was at a bridge recently in St. Louis Park in my district, and this was a 73-year-old bridge. I mean, you know, this bridge needed some care and needed to be refurbished to make sure that it stays safe. You know, and there are bridges like that all over my district, all over America. And so this $556 billion surface transportation bill and the approximately $1.7 trillion in widespread domestic investment. The budget for all, Mr. Speaker, is all about putting Americans back to work first. But here's something about the budget for all that people need to know. And it's that our budget is more fiscally responsible than the Republican budget. Now, if you ask Republicans, they think, oh, well, liberals, you know, they may not be bad people, but they're not realistic. They just want to give all the money away. They don't want to hold people responsible. Well, you know what? Our budget is more fiscally disciplined than the Republican Ryan budget. Unlike the Republican budget, the budget for all substantially reduces the deficit and does so in a way that does not devastate or set back our recovery. We achieve these notable benchmarks by focusing on the true drivers of our deficit: unsustainable tax policies, overseas wars, and policies that helped the recent recession, rather than putting America's middle class social safety net on the chopping block. Our budget creates a fairer America We end tax cuts for the wealthiest 2% of Americans on schedule at the year's end, which is they're set to expire, and we let them expire for the top 2%. Extends tax relief for the middle-class households and the vast majority of Americans. Creates new tax brackets for millionaires and billionaires in line with the Buffett rule. Eliminates the tax code's preferential treatment of tax capital gains and dividends. Abolishes corporate welfare for oil, gas, and coal companies. It eliminates loopholes that allow businesses to dodge true tax liability, and creates a publicly funded federal election system that gets corporate money out of politics for good. Now, it has always bothered me, Mr. Speaker, that only about two-thirds of American corporations don't pay any taxes, because there's a one-third that do. Because we have this system of loopholes everywhere, some corporations have to pay full freight and others don't have to. GE, for example, was said to have paid no or very low taxes. But there's a lot of big ones that didn't pay. Bank of America didn't pay. There's a lot of them that didn't pay. I don't think Boeing paid. I'm saying that for the one-third of American corporations that do pay, we got to make sure everybody ponies up something. And if more people pay, the burden on the ones that do pay will be lower. The budget for all recognizes this important truth, unlike the Ryan budget, which protects coal, oil, and those dirty, polluting industries, oil, gas, and coal companies. Now, another aspect of the budget driver, another big budget driver, are these overseas wars. Let's face it, in Iraq they told us that we were supposed to be getting rid of weapons of mass destruction. There weren't any. They told us that Saddam Hussein was connected to Al-Qaeda. He wasn't. And they say that we had to go there to, make sure that there would be peace. Well, we're leaving now, and the Iraqis, well, it's their country, and they're managing the best they can. Still, it's not that peaceful, but the fact is, 10 years couldn't solve that problem. It was right to get out of Iraq, but it's also right to get out of Afghanistan. We need to responsibly and expeditiously end our military presence in Iraq and Afghanistan, leaving America more secure at home and abroad. Our budget adapts our military to a 21st century threats, because we definitely believe that America should be strong, but we should be adapting ourselves to the reality that we're in. One of the attributes of our bill, one of the very important components, is a piece of legislation called the SANE Act. This excellent piece of legislation reduces our nuclear weapons arsenal, because this is all Cold War stuff designed to fight the Soviet Union, and there's no more Soviet Union. So what are we doing with these, 20th century weapon systems in the 21st century? We need to bring some sanity to that. And we reduce the budget so that it reflects the modern reality. The budget for all protects American families by providing a make-work-pay tax credit for families struggling with high gas and food costs. This make-work-pay tax credit for families that are struggling with high gas and food costs is the kind of thing that incentivizes work, which is what we want to do. We extend the earned income tax credit and child dependent care credit. Now, I've just been joined, Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy to say, by a good friend of mine from the great state of Texas, Sheila Jackson Lee. Whenever she's ready to stand, whenever she's ready, she could just stand on up and hold forth. But I'm looking forward to sharing some mic time with her, because her insights are always very important. So Congresswoman Lee should just take her time until she's ready. But when she is, stand on up, and I'll recognize her immediately, Mr. Speaker. Moving forward on this issue of protecting American families, the Budget for All invests in programs to stave off further foreclosures to keep Americans in their homes. This is very important. A lot of the economists who look at the problems with our economy have concluded that until we get our hands around this foreclosure crisis, we're going to continue, Mr. Speaker, to have very slow growth. Well, the Budget for All addresses this problem. We go deal with investing in programs to stave off further foreclosures. We also invest in children's education by increasing in education, training, and social services. So the Budget for All is a good budget. It's a budget that makes sense. It's a budget for America. It's a budget designed to help the middle class and to put Americans to work. It's a budget that really reflects what Americans want, which is to get out of Afghanistan and Iraq. And we're already out of Iraq, but we're still kind of there, but we don't have a military presence there. We got contractors there. And this is a good budget that I'd hope that people will take a very strong look at. It is more fiscally responsible than the Ryan budget. We spend more up front to get the economy moving, but then we save money on the back end. We end up getting to primary surplus in the year 2016, and this is an important thing that we need to do. So let me just now, if the good lady is ready, you ready? Just pass the microphone and yield to Congresswoman Jackson Lee, who has distinguished herself in many areas, not the least of which is fighting for a fair budget for our nation. So I yield now to Congresswoman Jackson Lee from Texas.
I thank the co-chair of the Progressive Caucus for once again reminding America of America's greatness. That's why over 90-plus members joined together to be members of the Progressive Caucus. We have a sense of optimism, Mr. Ellison, that reflects our commitment to investing in human capital. Earlier today, I had the opportunity of listening to a discourse about the transportation bill, and I will point to what we've done with infrastructure. And there was the representation of the majority leader that we're living in hard times, we don't have money, that we can't be looking, for example, at the Senate bill, and we can't move forward. And I just listened as our minority whip spoke about the urgency of moving forward on an infrastructure bill. But what I think is important, and really the theme that I wanted to focus on as I listened to you in my office, and I just left about 12 constituents who are the beneficiaries of community health clinics, one of the items that we've supported as a Progressive Caucus for a very long time and championed along with the Tri-Caucus to put in the Affordable Care Act, which, by the way, 2-year anniversary is tomorrow. But the point is, we have optimism. We have the sense that America can get it done. You just put up a very telling poster that when our Republican friends begin to talk, we are headed toward a pathway of devastation. No Medicare, no Medicaid, allowing reckless investments or speculation to occur, jobs overseas, and not focusing on our recovery. But let me just take from our package, and by the way, we understand a balanced budget. We are using war savings for the people of the United States of America. Our troops come home, and we realign our national security focus. And I think most Americans will understand that even national security experts will tell us that it is probably a challenge to think we will have a ground war invasion like we've had years past ever again, that we're now fighting a war on terrorism or acts of terrorism. And certainly as we look to tell others to in essence become unnuclearized, we too must join the world's family, because it's only one-upsmanship. Now, I would just say that we do not disarm our nation. We believe in defending our nation, but we believe in doing it in a smart way. But what we have done is that we have these words, comprehensive economic recovery, but I'd like to say this is a smiley face, optimistic pathway for Americans. Don't you think young people who are now sophomores, juniors, and seniors in college looking for their bright day. Does anyone remember, as we come upon May, how exciting it was to look forward to a college graduation, a trade school graduation? You were just tickled pink. You were making sure your invitations were out. You were hoping that all relatives could make sure they had no conflicts. You really wanted grandma there, or aunt there, or favorite brother there, or mom and dad there, or family there. This was an exciting time. The Progressive Caucus budget speaks to that excitement and optimism and hopefulness. An infrastructure bank that allows the private sector to come together and effectively bring about infrastructure projects in all manner of areas, from the hamlets that are so small to the villages, to the county governments, to the city governments and state governments. Surface transportation. I introduced a surface transportation bill that has been slowed, another bill that would generate income and transportation security and recognize that we must secure our surface transportation. In this bill, we proposed a 6-year, $556 billion reauthorization bill that over 10 years would lead to $213 billion increase in transportation funding. But what it would do also is to create the many jobs to provide for small contractors, minority-owned contractors, women-owned contractors. It would create work. It's an optimistic view. Making work pay tax credit for 2013 and 2015, which is let folk who are working, let those get a benefit that makes sense. And then more than $2 trillion in domestic investment packaging. Just let me mention the idea of when you work with emergency jobs to restore the American dream, getting people out where improvement is needed, student improvement, park improvement, student jobs, neighborhood heroes, health community, I would say community, fairly qualified clinics, child care corps, getting folk to work. In my town, Mr. Ellison, in the Southwest, as you well know, we had a great drought in the last year. Volunteers are trying to plant trees, but I tell you, we could stand for a Heroes Corps, we could stand for Community Corps to get out there and help us reseed America, if you will. We know that. We know the Job Corps, but this is a concept that gets folk out working. And I also want to congratulate the University of Houston downtown, that is heavily minority, that just won the distinguished honor roll recognition for the largest amount of community service done by a campus across the nation, cited by the Department of Education. That means people are ready to put that to work. Tax credits for investment in advanced energy. I've got a company right in my community that's been awarded for its new innovative work on energy. Manufacturing, capital access for entrepreneurs and small businesses. Now, let me just say this. I am excited about the 3 million Apple IIIs that were sold, because I think that is optimistic and it applauds the genius of America, and it goes against the sad, deflated concept. Now, let me be very clear. I am not ignoring the unemployed Americans. I want to be very clear on that, and I don't think the Progressive Caucus has for a moment. We did a job tour. We're going back out again. We have no reason to dismiss the person who is now sitting unemployed. But what I want to say is there's some optimism. We got to get all those folk to be part of this new surge of optimism which this Progressive Caucus budget, if passed, would generate. But I want to just say this to my good friends at Apple. Bring the jobs home. You are manufacturing Apple III in China. And I certainly believe in an international framework. I know that everything can't be made in America, made at home. But I do know that aspects of the talent that you're using in China can be found here in the United States. And the cost of shipment, I can tell you, you can save some dollars. Let's put our thinking caps on to companies like Apple and find a way that you can balance those resources. I'm just going to cite General Electric. I know that we had put a real heavy heat on General Electric. I am told by their employees, they're bringing jobs home. I met with some employees in my district who indicated that they have been bringing them on home. I looked at them. They were real. They were alive. So they had jobs, and they said they worked for General Electric. Let's have a number of companies looking that way. Let me quickly, Mr. Chairman, just mention, because this is all exciting, and I think people need to hear about excitement and opportunity. We already talked about the manufacturing communities tax credit for the production of advanced technology vehicles. Again, everybody's saying we're slowing the hybrid, we're slowing the electric car, but all of that can create opportunity. Tax credits for alternative fuel commercial vehicles, which is very possible. Double the amount of startup expenditures. So that means that if you've got a startup, we're going to double what you can expense. I think that makes a lot of sense. Young people are the ones that are always starting startups. We need to encourage that. Enhance and make permanent the research and experimentation tax credit. That is right in the line of the Texas Medical Center. Many of our medical research hospitals, MD Anderson in the 18th Congressional District, well, it's our neighbor, is working on new technology. This fits an optimistic view on how we can cure the worst of the worst. Let me also say that I want to make mention that we are dealing with tax brackets, and we are looking, I think, at sensible policies dealing with capital gains and estate policy. And what I would say to those who are listening to us, get on our website, give us input. We're interested in what you have to say. And as well, let me put in just a pitch that no one likes this season when April 15th comes around, but we've tried to make our tax reform palatable. And as far as I can see, we have left alone the charitable tax exemption. And I tell you, there are those who are very concerned that we leave a little room for those who have that on the table, as everything on the table, that they would attack the charitable tax exemption and not go to some of the ones that the Progressive Caucus has focused on, because this nonprofit, this foundation said they would be stopped in their tracks. And I had one foundation, one nonprofit talk to me today and say how challenging it is to get funding for the disadvantaged and programs that deal with inner city. And so I want you to know that the Progressive Caucus recognizes the value of the charitable tax deduction, and we're not, you don't find that on our table. I just want to say something to Mr. Ellison. I wanted to mention for a moment Trayvon Martin, if he would just allow me to do so, because
by all means,
he is certainly a lawyer who's practiced law, but I have met Mr. Ellison's wonderful family of youth and young people, young man. That's what happens. People don't realize that we have families on both sides of the aisles, good Republican friends. We've been with our families, and so whatever you see us saying here on the floor of the House, we are particularly sensitive and warm toward members' families, because we are, in essence, despite our policy debates, we are a family here. And so I simply wanted to indicate, first, to give good wishes to Congressman Brown, who is now with her constituents in a major protest, Congresswoman Kareem Brown, in Florida, on this topic, on this sad and tragic incident. And I wanted to say that we will gather on Tuesday to present an opportunity or for the case to be heard on this issue and the federal government's responsibility or authority. But I just wanted to remind one of the things that in this budget we are very keenly sensitive to the needs of the Department of Justice. Again, an optimistic budget, because the Department of Justice is the armor in many instances that will come in and help a community when they cannot get help locally. Mr. Martin was killed on February 26. He was buried on March 1st. Today is March the 22nd. It was only when his parents came out or used their grief that they're still grieving to start asking why. Law-abiding citizens who were waiting for the city attorney and waiting on the chief of police, waiting on the governor of the state of Florida to say something, nothing was said. And so as this began to, the voices began to raise and the astonishment and outrage began to percolate, Ms. Ellison, it was not isolated to Florida or Sanford. If you listen to the various media outlets, parents, no matter what their background, were calling and asking, what about my child? And I think it is important that we show this young man, it could be any of our family members. Can we imagine our youngsters wearing the clothing of the day, hoodies, sneakers, jeans? Do I need to remind you that Mr. Trayvon Martin was simply getting some Skittles on a phone with his girlfriend, walking back to where his father was and going to look at some game? In this instance, it was basketball. And an individual, I come from local government, you come from state government. We know about Neighborhood Watch. We champion Neighborhood Watch. We have this community night out, police night out, whatever it is, and all of us have gone to it. We tell neighbors to watch out for each other. It's important for it to be said this was not watching out for each other. The basic 9/11 tape, if you frame it, the call came in, that's the right thing to do. The description, I may not adhere to some of the words in the description, but so be it. You describe this individual as such. But it came back and asked the specific question, are you following him? Yes. Do not do that. This youngster, football player, babysitter, likes to babysit, eating Skittles, Skittles, fun food to eat with a basketball game, was on the sidewalk, not coming out of a window, not knocking on a door, not standing in front of a door, not on the lawn, walking on a sidewalk. With the First Amendment and the Progressive Caucus that has stood many times on that First Amendment right, we've stood many times. Here he was walking, and we are now in an abyss of darkness in terms of what next happened. But as the description is, this young boy was shot point blank in the chest. And so we have to call upon the federal resources. We've called for a federal investigation. We've been joined by many colleagues. We have tapes of witnesses, meaning people inside their homes, saying they heard shouting and crying for help. We've heard people ask the question, why didn't the neighborhood watcher stand down in the car, move away? And we've also heard the author of the Stand Your Ground bill, which, by the way, is in 20 or so states, Republican state representative articulate in newspaper clips saying it was not a attack, pursue an attack. It is you can stand your ground upon someone coming, but it is not a pursue an attack. So I just wanted to indicate that it is important for members of Congress, and I believe there is a sense of outrage. We are not taking this to the level that does not respect the family that is mourning. We're not creating hysteria. We are only begging for the relief of others whose names have not come up, but there are people calling in and telling us about cases from the West Coast to the East Coast to the North to the South. So I wanted to indicate that we will be joining as members of Congress to hear the circumstances as much as we can on the theory of the federal government's responsibility or authority. I think that is the more appropriate approach to take. And I want to thank the gentleman for letting me articulate the, I think, just sheer horror of having our kids leave our home for innocence and not come back. And as a mother, I believe that, and as one that sees this, I believe we owe that family a response. I yield to the gentleman.
If the gentleman will yield, I just, you know, it's funny you should make that particular point about your family tie, because when I first heard about the case of Trayvon, I mean, my thought went immediately to my own 17-year-old son. My own 17-year-old son. We live in Minneapolis, and he could very well be running to go get some Skittles, talking on a cell phone. And it's horrifying to me, deeply disturbing and troubling that somebody would think that, first of all, that he was some sort of a problem because he was walking down the street. And then to follow him. And then even after the 9/11, people say don't follow, they still follow. You're right. Much has been said about the Florida law, the stand or your ground law. But this gentleman did not stand his ground. There's no evidence to suggest that that is what happened. He went after this kid. And then when you hear the tape of the boy screaming, you know, and somebody said to me earlier today, well, don't call Trayvon a boy. Hey, he's 17, he's a boy.
He's a boy.
And he was killed by a grown 28-year-old man. And it's deeply disturbing. I hope people who don't quite get it yet, you know, I wish they could feel how some of us feel about this case. I mean, horrible. You know, I spent 16 years in the criminal justice system. I know that horrible things happen. It's heartbreaking anytime we lose anyone. But to think that law enforcement would operate and treat this person with impunity is absolutely a abandonment of every principle of serve and protect. You know, if a cop did what this guy did, they would take his gun, they'd make him give a urine sample, they'd put him on administrative leave until this thing was sorted out. This guy walked away. And here's another thing. As a criminal defense lawyer, I find it nothing short of shocking that this man's representation that he shot in self-defense was good enough. I mean, if you got a self-defense claim, then after you're charged with murder, you can raise that and see if you convince a jury of it. We have a dead young man here, and the chief of police is like, well, these things happen. No, there needs to be accountability. And I hope that every parent, you know what I don't want to see happen? I hope people don't think, you know, this is something involving because this kid's black. You know, this could be a kid of any color.
That's right.
Any parent should be shocked. Any 17-year-old walking the streets ought to be worried that some overzealous wannabe police officer would just shoot them down. This case is a national outrage, and and you know what, and you know and I know, is because we both have worked in the system, that if the police would have done the arrest, processed this case in the ordinary course, probably wouldn't even hit national news. But because nothing was done,
absolutely nothing,
cold-blooded murder, looked like first-degree murder, we're all horrified. I yield back to the gentlelady.
Well, you speaking as a parent, and I think everyone can appreciate that. And you really highlighted it. In this instance, of course, we have to look and see whether there was a hate crime or civil rights violated. But you're absolutely right. We had nothing to go on. We have a person walking who the police themselves, who so many of us have worked to ensure that the guns on this street don't go after our law enforcement officer, because obviously there are many who believe the more guns, the better we are. Just guns, guns, guns. And this has nothing to do with the Second Amendment, just guns, guns, guns. So he has a concealed weapon. I'm not here to cast any aspersions, but as the reports are coming out, he has some challenges, meaning Mr. Zimmerman, to his record has some challenges. That in and itself, if the officers had brought him in, there's no evidence of that. Maybe they did, but there's no evidence of that. And do, as you indicated, the normal police work, albeit he has a defense, so be it, concealed weapon permit, stand your ground, but you have a dead person. And you have no witnesses, at least that the police have offered to say, Mrs. Jones, Mr. Smith, Mrs. Gonzalez said that they were in a knockdown, drag-out. That does not have any glimmer of information that has come out. The young man happened to be a person of color. We have placed in a bipartisan vote both hate crimes law, the 1964 Civil Rights Act, other bills that have been voted on in a bipartisan manner simply because we don't want America to violate those very precious rights. But I want to just share with you the Washington Post, because as I said to you, I've got Neighborhood Watch that says, experts say neighborhood watchers shouldn't be police. That very...
They should watch.
That is correct. And what I don't understand, and what we will be, if you will, perusing, is where did this case go wrong, and the fact that the federal government has to come in when things go wrong. Someone said to me in my office that this case has riveted like Emmett Till's case riveted.
Yeah.
And you are right. There are cases across America. Members have raised cases in conversations that we've had, and we need to have all that in an inventory. But if we can, out of this tragedy, say to those parents, Trayvon counts. We care. Young people count. Children count. Your community counts. Our communities count. I wanted to share that. I'm not going to let this go. Judiciary Committee, the caucuses, Congressional Black Caucus, the Tri-Caucus that involves the Asian Caucus, the Hispanic Caucus, letters that have been written by a number of members of Congress, the work of Congresswoman Brown. The Progressive Caucus, I know, is a willing partner when it comes to issues of justice, but we are not going to let this rest without finding some relief and rest for this family. And I thank the chairman for his personal story. Since I met the young man, and we've all traveled together on family caucus events where families come together. And I just conclude by simply holding up again this picture. And for those who don't know the terminology, let me just show he's in a football attire here, and we don't know what college he would have gone to or what football team, if that had been his choice, that he would have played on. But let me just put up, if you can see it, this is an innocent face, but he's wearing, or is wearing, a hoodie. And if anyone needs to know, I have a hoodie. It's my local college's paraphernalia that they give you, and you wear it to a game, and it has, that you buy, and it has a hoodie. It's something that I think everybody has seen in this country, and I see nothing on here that says, bad guy, criminal, shoot me. That's not what we do in America. I want to thank the gentleman for allowing me to share and to say that we will find some resolution to this. I want to yield back to the gentleman simply by concluding and saying I do believe in an optimistic America. My revealing my pain about this young man is the pain for all whose names we have not called. But in believing in an optimistic America, I want to be a problem solver. I want to solve this problem or answer this problem with respect to Trayvon Martin. But I want to say that as I perceive this product that has been produced, this budget for all, I am so grateful that over 90+ members of the Progressive Caucus saw the right route to take was the optimistic, upturned, positive, open opportunity budget to give to all of America. That's what we should be supporting, not the downturn, the no way out, but really that there is a new day for America. I want to yield back to the gentleman and thank him for his courtesies.
I thank the gentlelady for joining me tonight. I would like, we talked about the budget for all, and the hashtag, again, is people can check it out on Twitter or anywhere else. It'll be on U.S. Progress. We want people to look at the budget for all. We want your ideas. But I think it's also important to draw a contrast. The Ryan budget, recently released, the Republican budget, does some critical things Americans should know about. Ends Medicare, it devastates Medicaid, rewards Wall Street, punishes Main Street, protects corporations that ship jobs overseas, threatens the recovery. It preserves tax breaks for the people who don't need them, and actually cuts into the social safety net for America's everyday heroes, police, fire, job training, small business, infrastructure, college affordability. You know, I'll say this. I think the facts show that in the course of the last couple of months, I mean, I guess 18 months, thereabouts, you know, I believe that the Republican majority really hasn't been working on solving problems. Now, people can say whatever they want about Dodd-Frank, or they can say whatever they want about the Affordable Care Act, or the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act for women, or they can say anything they want about the Credit Card Holders Bill of Rights. But in the last Congress, these are bills the Democratic House majority passed that were designed to try to solve problems for Americans. Now, some people say, well, it should have done this more, shouldn't have done so much of that. Fine, that's what we do here. We debate stuff. But I'm not aware of any single piece of legislation we've looked at since they took the majority designed to solve a problem. It's all been cut everything, whack everything. Let's not take a surgical look at what should be cut, what's not working, just cut everything. They have created budget crisis after fiscal crisis after debt limit crisis. I mean, this is the Congress of crisis. And you know, the gentlelady is aware, and the Speaker may be aware, that because the Ryan budget basically goes below the non-discretionary, non-military discretionary in the Budget Control Act, which was a deal, when the Senate comes in with their budget and this budget they won't match, we're going to have another standoff. Oh, and by the way, we're going to have a standoff in 10 days because the transportation bill is expiring. The House majority, the Republican caucus, will not agree with the Senate to pass a 2-year transportation bill, so the transportation bill within 10 days is looking to expire. They say we'll only do a 3-month bill. 3 months? This is putting everybody's lives in jeopardy. They just did it with the FAA not more than a few months ago. This is the crisis Congress where they will not make long-term decisions because they're playing politics. I believe that the Republicans have put defeating the president as their primary goal. Therefore, of course they're not operating on the basis of trying to solve any problems. Now, before any Republicans get upset with me for saying these things that I honestly believe to be true, don't get mad at me. Americans believe that that's what they're doing. Now here's the question put to Americans. Republicans would rather see President Obama lose than see America win. Half of Americans believe the Republicans are sabotaging the recovery to win an election. This is a Washington Post poll. 50% responded positively to that, 44% said no. If you got most people thinking that your main goal is to get rid of the president and not help them, that's a problem. And look, some folks might say, Keith, that's not true. That's just you politicians arguing again. Well, Mitch McConnell said it. He said our main priority is to defeat the president, make the president a one-term president. So at the end of the day, this budget reflects that politics playing thing that they seem to be on. They're rigging the system even more heavily in favor of the richest 1%. Their budget gives generously to the rich, protects existing tax breaks for those at the top of the income scale. Also, the reality is that the only way to pay for such huge tax cuts for the 1% is to make the 99% pay the tab. Their budget would weaken the middle class in America. First and foremost, the plan ends Medicare guarantee of decent, affordable health insurance in retirement. It also slashes critical middle class investments such as education and infrastructure by 45 and 24%. Cuts education by 45%, infrastructure by 24%. It includes not a single new measure to help the nearly 13 million unemployed. Though we've recently enjoyed several months of solid jobs growth, our current economic recovery is by no means assured, and we still have a long way to go. Not only does the House Republican majority budget fail to propose a single new idea for spurring job growth, it would even force us to swerve into severe austerity. The Ryan budget, which is the Republican budget, cuts the following. It kills even more jobs by cuts to federal workforce by over roughly 210,000 over 3 years, cuts food stamps and welfare, cuts retiree benefits from federal employee pensions, cuts support for farmers, cuts anti-poverty programs, and uses proceeds to give rich people even more tax cuts. As I said before, the Republicans who believe, and they do, so many of them believe in it, they believe in trickle-down economics. This is the idea that rich people don't have enough money and poor people have too much. The problem is that they have never, that belief system has never succeeded. One of the best economies since World War II was in the 1990s. One of the best. We had the Clinton-era tax rates, which we hope we'll return to, at least for the top 2%. The top 2% were doing great during Clinton's time, and yet the Republicans say that unless we give rich people more money, the economy is not going to be good. Well, it's not good now, and they've been in charge for a long time. So the bottom line is the Ryan proposal, budget proposal, is bad for America. Cutting basic criteria for seniors and not investing in jobs. The budget for all, invest in America and puts Americans as the top priority, not just winning some election. So with that, I'll yield back the balance of my time and thank the Speaker for the time.
Gentleman yields back. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5, 2011, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Fleming, for 30 minutes.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and indeed a pleasure to come to the floor today, speak to this chamber, to talk about a subject that I think is very important on the minds of the American people, and that is the 2-year anniversary of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, also known as PPACA, and certainly more commonly known as Obamacare. Now, I want to give you a little context, Mr. Speaker, of where I come from. I'm a congressman from Louisiana, the 4th District, centered in Shreveport-Bossier. I've been a family physician for 36 years, still see patients when I have the opportunity. I also have businesses on the side that are not related to health care. And so in my world for many years and in raising a family and responsibilities of meeting payrolls have included not only running a small medical practice, but also a growing business, dealing with all of the regulations, the taxation, and the many different issues, personnel problems, human resource problems that we must deal with. And certainly providing health care has been a great challenge over the years, and there's no question that the system has not been what it should be prior to this time. And in fact, one of the reasons why I ran for Congress, and many other of my colleagues who are physicians, we have 15 MDs just in the Republican section alone, and I think we'll have more next year. The reason why we've become so activated, if you will, when it comes to federal policy on health care is because of all the failures that we've seen over the years and the problems with government trying to micromanage health care. So what I want to talk about today is broken promises with regard to Obamacare. You may recall that candidate Obama, Senator Obama, says you will not have to change your health care plan if his health care plan is brought into law. For those of you, he said, who have insurance now, nothing will change under the Obama plan, except that you will simply pay less. And another quote from him is this. This is President Obama in June of 2009. And that means that no matter how we reform health care, we will keep this promise to the American people. If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor, period. If you like your health care plan, you will be able to keep your health care plan, period. Well, what is the truth of this? By the administration's own estimates, new health care regulations will force most firms and up to 80% of small businesses to give up their current plans by 2013. Grandfathered plans would then be subject to the costly new mandates and increased premiums under the President's health care plan. And I'll give you, again, my own business is back home. We still cover our employees, and we would fall under the grandfather. But here's what we're up against. If we change just one dotted I, one crossed T, that totally nullifies the grandfather rule that applies to our plan. So what that means is if we've changed anything, the cost structure, anything, then simply we will fall into the government-mandated plan in which we have to choose among the 3 specified, certified government plans that would be chosen for us. Now, you could say, well, we could keep exactly what we have without changing one scintilla of it. The problem is, what if the cost continues to go up, and it will, and we say, you know what, maybe let's raise the deductible, raise co-payments, you know, cut some coverage someplace, change the way we cover pharmaceuticals, do something to lower that cost so we can afford it as a company and our patients can afford it. No, it then nullifies the grandfather clause, and then it activates, of course, Obamacare, and we will be required to be in it. Let's go to broken promise number 2. I have many broken promises, but I'm going to focus on 6 today. Broken promise number 2. President Obama in September of 2009 says, first, I will not sign a plan that adds one dime to our deficits, either now or in the future. I will not sign it if it adds one dime to the deficit, now or in the future, period. Well, is that true? An honest accounting of the health care plan finds that it will increase the deficit by hundreds of billions in the first 10 years alone. For instance, the law double counts the Medicare savings. See, it's interesting the way we have something in Washington and in Congress called the CBO, Congressional Budget Office. It uses a scoring mechanism. It works out of a 10-year budget window. So whatever we do, it either costs more or costs less based on what happens forward in the next 10 years. And so this was a big challenge for the Obama administration to get this bill passed because they saw what we saw, and that is it will add billions of dollars to the deficit. So what did they do? They manipulated the budget window to make it look like it paid for itself. And how did they do that? Well, for one thing, the way the bill is set in motion and the way it's implemented is that for the first 4 years, you've noticed that even though it passed in March of 2010, it hasn't been implemented. Why? Very good reason. Because the costs don't begin until it's implemented. However, the revenues already began soon after the bill passed. So the way it was scored is we have 10 years of revenue, that's income, and 6 years of cost. Well, Mr. Speaker, I could run any business profitably that way if I have 10 years of revenue and only 6 years of cost, and that's precisely what happened here. However, the law now has been rescored, and in fact, what was supposed to be a $900-and-something billion bill over 10 years is now rescored at 1.75, and next year, which will then stretch it out the full 10 years, it will be well over $2 trillion. Former CBO Director Douglas Holtz-Eakin has written that under a realistic set of assumptions, the law will increase the deficit by at least $500 billion in the first 10 years and more than $1.5 trillion in the second decade. Now, Mr. Speaker, let's go back to where we are with government health care pre-Obamacare. Back in the 90s, the last time that we balanced a budget was under President Clinton after, of course, the Republican-controlled House sent, and Congress in general, sent a balanced budget 3 times in a row. He vetoed it twice and then finally signed it the 3rd time. How did they do it and we can't do it today? Well, one reason is very important, and that is that at that time 30% of the budget was made up of mandatory spending. That's entitlement spending, which would be Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and other forms of mandatory spending such as welfare, Section 8, and so forth. So that meant that 70% was discretionary spending, which means that you could cut budgets out of certain departments and agencies and you could begin to balance a budget once again. Well, today it is 60% of the budget that's mandatory or entitlement spending and growing, which means that we have little, certainly much less to work with in order to balance the budget, and it continues to grow. And the largest piece of that is Medicare itself. Mr. Speaker, I guarantee you that most Americans do not realize that today Medicare is very much a subsidized and entitlement program. Even though its recipients and those of us who are in the workforce paying into it, even though we pay premiums into it, the return on those premiums are threefold. That is to say, for every dollar you put into Medicare, you get $3 back in benefit, and that applies no matter what your income. Warren Buffett is old enough to be on Medicare, and as a result of that, Warren Buffett, with his $40 billion, gets the same subsidies as the little lady who barely gets by each month. So it's important for us to understand that we already have a government-run health care system, that is Medicare, that the actuaries, the CBO, everyone says becomes insolvent, runs out of money in 4 to 8 years. It just depends on which estimate you believe in. And to be honest with you, with each year, that estimate comes closer and closer rather than farther and farther away. So I hate to say it, but promise number 1 was broken. The President promised that there would be nothing to change about your health care plan or your doctor. We know that not to be true. Number 2, broken promise 2, is it will not add 1 dime to the deficit, and we know now that it's going to be at least $500 billion, perhaps as much as $1.5 trillion over the coming decade. So let's move to broken promise number 3. President Barack Obama said in September 2009, and one more misunderstanding I want to clear up. Under our plan, no federal dollars will be used to fund abortions, and federal conscience laws will remain in place. Well, is that true? You know, there was a whole lot of drama around here during the debate. The original Obamacare bill, and by the way, I want to point out something about the term Obamacare. I'm often asked in my town halls, why do you call it Obamacare? Isn't that being derogatory or in some way denigrating to the bill itself or to the President? And of course, the rhetorical response I have is, well, if it's a law or bill or a law that you can be proud of, then why are you ashamed to name it after President Obama? If it was a bill I was proud of, a law I was proud of, I would love it if it was called Fleming Care. But quite honestly, I don't think even the President is proud of this bill. And how do I know that? Because on the 2-year anniversary, where are the cakes and the candles? Where's the celebration? Remember that Speaker Pelosi, when she was Speaker right here in this chamber, said that we have to pass it to know what's in it. Well, Mr. Speaker, we now know what's in it, and we're not happy about it. 57% of the American people say we want it repealed, and only 38%, and these are consistent numbers since the passage of the law, and in fact they've actually gotten a little worse over time. The vast majority of Americans do want it repealed. But back to this. What about funding of abortions? When the bill first passed this House, we had protections and guarantees. We had a few pro-life members from the Democrat side. We had a vast number of pro-life members on the Republican side. And we came together and said, okay, we're not going to vote, or they're not going to vote for this bill. No Republican voted for it, but the Democrats who were pro-life said, we're not going to support this bill unless it has protections not to prevent abortions, but to prevent taxpayer funding of abortions. Today we're in a divided nation when it comes to the question of abortions. About half of Americans, 51%, are pro-life. They do not believe that we should take innocent life. Something near that say, well, we think it's a woman's right to choose. But by a margin of around 75%, Americans say we do not want to pay for, through our taxpayer money, we do not want to pay for abortions. And so we were given certain guarantees that that wouldn't happen. However, when the bill came back to us from the Senate, all the protections, conscience clause protections, protections against taxpayer funding of abortions, all of that was stripped away. Now, the President would say even today, and many Democrats would say, there's not any taxpayer funding of abortions. Well, again, is that true? Just recently, the Department of Health and Human Services, under Secretary Sebelius, issued a final rule on the state health care exchanges providing for taxpayer funding of insurance coverage that includes elective of abortion. The rule confirms that abortions on demand will be included in publicly funded insurance plans. This means that it is absolutely required that insurance companies provide abortion services. Now, you know, even among the pro-choice Americans, they would suggest to you and admit to you that while they think a woman should have the right to choose, they also would agree we need to reduce the number of abortions whenever possible. But while making abortions more and more convenient and more available and cheaper, that's not going to be the case. Even though abortions have been coming down year after year because young ladies have been deciding for life instead of against life, we're going to be seeing those numbers go back up again because of the wholesale subsidy of the industry. And what do I mean by that? To comply with the accounting requirement of Obamacare, plans will collect a $1 abortion surcharge for each premium payer. The enrollee will make two payments, $1 per month for abortion and another payment for the rest of the services. As described in the rule, the surcharge can only be disclosed to the enrollee at the time of enrollment. Furthermore, insurance plans may only advertise the total cost of the premiums without disclosing that enrollees will be charged a $1 per month fee to pay directly and directly subsidize abortions. Now, that's kind of technical jargon. What does it mean? It basically means that in the most technical sense, the premium dollars will not be used to fund abortions. What will happen is that you as Americans will be charged an extra fee, a surcharge, if you will. It'll be booked separately, but it still flows directly to abortion services. You'll be required to do that. Under Obamacare, all insurance plans must cover at no charge to the patient, that is, charge to the taxpayer but not to the patient, abortion-inducing drugs, contraceptives, sterilization, and patient education and counseling for women of reproductive age. Religious employers such as Catholic hospitals, Christian schools, and faith-based pregnancy care centers will have to provide and pay for such coverage for their employees regardless of their religious beliefs. Now, Mr. Speaker, that is a direct violation of the First Amendment to the Constitution. The First Amendment to the Constitution provides that government shall establish no religion, and you should have the freedom to practice religion in any way you see fit. And we've seen this played out over the many years of this country. For instance, the Amish are against war. It's against their conscience to fight in a war. And if indeed an Amish person is asked to join the military, to pick up a rifle and go fight, if he declares that it's against his religious conscience, then he is not forced to fight. And that is a well-respected, a well-observed tradition, and it's certainly right down to the very beginning of the core of the Constitution. But for some reason, we're suspending that constitutional right. That is to say that a hospital owner, a insurance company owner, a physician even, or nurse, who may choose not to provide abortion-inducing pills, certainly provide abortions themselves, or perhaps for whatever fundamental religious reasons, such as in Catholicism, it's against their religion to practice sterilization or even provide birth control pills, that they cannot refuse to provide those. Now, the question, of course, comes from Democrats on this. Well, that means that those services will be cut off from Americans. Well, today, these institutions are not required to produce that, and does anybody have a problem finding these services, and in an affordable way? Every state has a program, it's funded both state and federally, to get free services with regard to obstetrical and gynecological care and prevention of pregnancy. So it already exists today. It's completely available. There's no reason that we have to force health care providers to participate in something that is against their religious or moral convictions. Now, we recently had a mandate, a rule provided by the President that said, look, doesn't matter who you are or where you are or what kind of religion you practice, you're going to have to provide the abortion or abortion-related services that we dictate to you. And then as a result of the pushback of the Catholic Church, they said, well, we'll make an accommodation. But, Mr. Speaker, that accommodation never occurred. That was only a statement made by the President. The actual rule that was propagated is still the rule today, and in fact, it's now been finalized. Nothing was changed. It was certainly just spin put on the entire discussion of the rule. Well, let's move along to broken promise number 4. President Barack Obama, September 2009, in an address to a joint session of Congress, and I was here, says, "I will protect Medicare." Now, did he protect Medicare? Well, the first thing that Obamacare does is it cuts $500 billion, a half $1 trillion, from Medicare itself. I repeat, Obamacare, the first thing it does to finance the services that it provides, it cuts $500 billion from Medicare. Part of that is taken out of the so-called Medicare Advantage program, which is a private part of Medicare, where private plans like Humana Gold are provided funds. But half or more of that is simply taken out of direct services, such as home health, hospice services, many other kinds of services. And so I don't see how you can remove $500 billion from Medicare and begin to say that you're going to protect it. And in fact, we Republicans have been criticized in the last year that for some reason we want to end Medicare. And nothing could be further from the truth. Republicans want to save Medicare. But because Medicare, you heard me say, Medicare will become insolvent in 4 to 8 years, the experts tell us. Don't take my word for it. Go to the experts, the actuaries and the CBO. They tell us that the system runs out of money, the checks start bouncing in 4 to 8 years. And so what have our Democrat colleagues done to save Medicare? And whenever you ask them, all you hear is crickets. What did the Republicans answer to that? Well, we submitted in 2011 a budget that would not only protect Medicare but sustain it indefinitely by the use of premium support, means testing, and many other things, and opening up Medicare to market forces so it would drive costs down and increase services. So whether you like the Republican solution or not, we do have a solution. Our Democrat friends offer no solution. So their plan is no plan. Their plan is sticking your head in the sand, and therefore their plan is the one that would end Medicare. On to broken promise number 5. Senator Barack Obama, candidate Obama, said, "Under my plan, no family making less than $250,000 a year will see any form of tax increase." Well, is that true? Well, let me go down the list and you decide for yourself, Mr. Speaker. $52 billion in fines on employers who do not provide a government-approved coverage. $32 billion in taxes on health insurance plans. Not a penalty, just simply straightforward an excise tax, which adds up to $32 billion. And, Mr. Speaker, if you think that your tax rates are going to go down, your premiums are going to go down when the taxes on those companies go up, then we need to sit down and talk about it. $5 billion in taxes from limits on over-the-counter medication. $15 billion in taxes from limiting the deduction on itemized medical expenses. And that's to everybody, not just people who make over $200,000, $250,000 a year. $13 billion in taxes from new limits on flexible spending accounts. $60 billion in taxes on health insurance plans. $27 billion in taxes on pharmaceutical companies. $20 billion in taxes on medical device companies. We already hear of medical device companies either going out of business or moving their business overseas. $3 billion in taxes on tanning services. $3 billion in taxes on self-insured health plans, and $1 billion in new penalties on health savings account distributions. Remember that one of the most useful tools in limiting cost that's been well received by beneficiaries of private insurance has been health savings accounts, which allows you to keep your own money and spend your own money and save the first dollar expenses to insurance companies, which ultimately lowers your premiums. I know that because we instituted that about 7 years ago in our companies, and instead of having 15% increase year over year in our premiums, they flattened out and have never been above 3% per year. And that means more money we can pay our employees and more benefits that they can enjoy. But here's a couple of really important ones I think everyone needs to understand, Mr. Speaker. In 2013, the payroll tax will increase 0.9% going to Medicare for those making $200,000 to $250,000 a year. That is to say, single filer $200,000, couple $250,000. Now, Mr. Speaker, most people hearing this might say, well, that doesn't apply to me because I don't make $200,000 a year. But this is not indexed, which means that in a few years, through inflation, Mr. Speaker, everyone will be included in this, virtually. Certainly the middle class would be. Already today we have a similar problem called AMT, Alternative Minimum Tax. It was designed years ago to hit the wealthy, the high-income earners. And who is it hitting today? It's hitting the middle class because it hasn't been indexed. But that isn't the worst of it when it comes to taxes. There's a 3.8% tax on the sale of your assets. Again, for people who make $200,000 single, $250,000 for a couple. Again, the question is, well, what do I care? I sell my house, I make some money on it, but I don't make $200,000 a year. I sell my stocks, maybe I sell a business, I sell some other sort of asset. Should I worry about that? Well, maybe today you don't. The average American doesn't make $200,000, $250,000 a year. But in a few years, through inflation, and the way we're printing money these days, that should be very soon, average Americans will easily be making $200,000, $250,000, and as a result, they will be captured in that. The middle class will be hurt the most by this tax. The law also forces people to buy insurance. Then the federal government taxes employer-provided plans at a 40% rate. This tax will hit middle-income families especially hard. So you see, Mr. Speaker, we have a bevy of taxes, at least 10 or more that I've listed here. The vast majority of them hit the middle class and even lower than that. There's no way that this promise was ever kept, and in my opinion, it was ever intended to be kept. Broken promise number 6. Senator Barack Obama, February 2008, again candidate Obama, said in Columbus, Ohio, if you've got health insurance, we're going to work with you to lower your premiums by $2,500 per family per year. And I think this is perhaps the cruelest promise of all. What has actually happened? The annual Kaiser Family Foundation survey of employer-provided insurance found that average family premiums totaled $12,860 in 2008, $13,375 in 2009, $13,770 in 2010, and $15,073 in 2011. Premiums have already risen by $2,213 since President Obama took office, and much of that increase was as a direct result from Obamacare. Why? Because the mandates create more cost. You know, oftentimes, Mr. Speaker, folks will say to me, well, look, if you Republicans want to repeal Obamacare, will you keep coverage for pre-existing illness? Will you keep coverage for folks who are up to 26 years old and living in their household? And my answer is this: we certainly can, and in fact, we could have been doing that all along. But if, Mr. Speaker, we add more mandates, we take caps off, all that does is raise the premium. The marketplace has to deal with that one way or another. So you have to decide for yourselves as consumers. Do you want more benefits, less caps, or do you want less benefits, more caps? You're going to have to pay for it either way. And so I would say, Mr. Speaker, yes, we would love to keep those, but what we'd rather do more than that is to make it a choice for the American citizens. They can choose whichever one they want. If you want a plan that, for instance, has no lifetime caps, fine, but you are going to have to pay an incrementally more in your premiums in order to receive that benefit. The CBO projects that the law's new benefit mandates will raise premiums in the individual market by $2,100 per family. The increase is because people will be forced to buy richer coverage, which will encourage them to consume even more health care. So you see, Mr. Speaker, the President, when he was a candidate, promised that the cost of premiums would go down by $2,500 per year per family. It has already gone up that much. So that's a spread of about $5,000 per year, and it's expected to go up even another $2,100 as Obamacare fully kicks in. Mr. Speaker, these are the main 6 points that I wanted to bring out today, but I'm going to touch well, in closing, I would just like to say that we'll be posting, Mr. Speaker, on our website these promises and the others that have been broken. And I pledge with many of my colleagues here in the House that we will hopefully, at the beginning of next year, fully repeal Obamacare and replace it with something that's common sense, that's market-driven, that reestablishes the doctor-patient relationship and puts the choice back into the hands of the American citizen. With that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5th, 2011, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gomer, for 30 minutes.